It's India versus Hungary B in the third round of the Chess Olympiad 2024. As a host nation, Hungary gets to have two teams, in fact, three teams at this Olympiad, and India is taking on them in the third round. Gukesh is playing on the top board. This is his second game at the Olympiad. He took the rest in the first round. Then in the second round, he managed to win, and now playing against Adam Kozak, rated 2609 from Hungary. Quite a strong player. At one point was the youngest GM from his country. And we are about to begin. The shake of hands and off we go. Gukesh opens the game with 1d4. Let's see what Kozak comes up with here. He plays his knight out to f6. Gukesh is very well prepped now in the opening after playing the candidates and also preparing for the World Championship match. So he can play e4, d4, just about all the openings out there. Brings his knight out to f3. And now Kozak can go d5, which is generally the move that we see the most at top level chess. But there's also b6, the Queen's Indian. But he goes for the Bogo Indian with bishop b4. And now the main move is bishop d2. Let's see what Gukesh opts for. There's also knight d2. And if you play knight c3, it transposes into the Nimzo Indian. Gukesh thinks for a bit and brings his knight to d2. This seems like his prep, perhaps, because this is not the most common move at the highest level. They play their bishop here, but this is a very logical move. The idea is to ask a question to the bishop, and once he takes, you take back, getting the bishop pair. d5 played by Adam. One of the downsides of this move is what Gukesh has now shown. Check, attacking the bishop. You have to put your knight on c6. And while this check now looks like a waste of time, what Gukesh is essentially saying is that the knight is not well placed on the c6 square. And that is going to cause trouble for you. And this is why he's played it. Now there are two main moves, a3 and e3. Gukesh goes for e3 here. How much of this is an advantage is the question. Black castles, because queen a4, you have lost time to provoke the knight. The knight can move away at some point. a3 played. He takes the knight and Gukesh takes back. So something like knight e7, b6, c5 could be possible, but first he tries to win back the bishop. Very logical chess there. And I like Gukesh's next move, rook d1. Very strong move, well prepared. I think this seems to be his preparation. And knight e7 by Kozak, and logical move because you want to play b6, bb7 and c5. That's the point. The bishop comes out to d3, putting pressure on the knight on e4. And if knight takes d2, you want to take it back with the rook. So b6 played here. And black wants to put the bishop on b7. Let's see what Gukesh does here. He brings his queen back to c2. And now you maybe can take here, because taking on h7 is not a good idea. Later on the bishop can get trapped. But he plays bishop b7 and Gukesh just castles. Adam goes h6, a logical move. But I think it's a bit of a problem because now Gukesh can save his bishop. He can go bishop e1 or bishop c1 and keep the bishop pair for himself. He goes bishop c1, and I like this move that he's played because now he can keep the bishop pair. a5 played, trying to clamp down with a4, and Gukesh goes b3, which is a nice move, making square for his bishop. Also, if a4, you can meet it with b4 in the position. Knight comes to g6. Adam's position lacks a bit of flexibility for sure. The main problem is that the break in the position c5 is to Gukesh's benefit. f5 was played and Gukesh goes a4, rook comes up, and now knight e1. What a beautiful move. He wants to push the knight away with f3. That is his plan. Now you will see that Gukesh of course loves to attack and play creative chess, but here in this game he's just trying to first kick the knight moves away. Now his knight on e1 would do well on d3, that's why he moves the bishop away. Then the rook will come here, the knight will come to d3, queen e8 played. You see the knight comes slowly into the center and he's slowly playing these ideas. Knight d7 by his opponent. And now this next move, little move, rook f e1, love it. The point is to drop the bishop back to f1 and have the rooks very nicely placed on the e files and d file. Knight e7. It's actually trademark of a very mature player, the way Gukesh is playing. Look at this. First the bishop dropped back to e2 for the knight, then to f1 for the rook. Brilliant. Knight comes to c6, trying to look at the b4 square, but the knight is controlling it for the time being. Bishop a3 played, knight comes to f6, and now maybe pushing the pawn to c5. No, rook c1, no hurry there. Rook d7 played here by Adam, and now Gukesh goes knight f4. He's still now continuing to put pressure in the center. Queen comes to f7. Well, the point was the f5 pawn was hanging, so c5. Now finally Gukesh gaining some space, threatening bishop b5 to pin here, so the rook moves back. He anyway goes bishop b5 to attack the knight. The knight has to move away. He goes knight d7 because if takes, the rook would protect c6. Queen d2 played. And he goes queen f6. The rook comes up. You want to double on the c file. g5 played. And now Gukesh brings his knight back to d3. Knight to b8. And the rook comes to c1 slowly and steadily. Gukesh mounting the pressure there. Queen g7. He brings his queen back to e1. And Adam goes king h8. Gukesh now brings his knight into the center. This finally trying to break through here. Knight takes knight. Pawn takes. The threat is c6 perhaps to just completely tie down black. So c6 played here. And Gukesh brings his bishop back to d3. White's position very, very good. The main problem for black being that his a5 pawn is very weak. So after rook c5 he's going to lose the a5 pawn and he'll be a pawn down. Yes, he can win this pawn on e5 with knight d7, knight e5. But look at this long diagonal that will open up. The rook takes pawn. But anyway, you have to do something about the lost pawn. And his threat is if you go bishop b2 to take check and to take the bishop. So Gukesh goes with his bishop back. Rook 8 challenging the rook there. And now very quiet move, rook c2, preparing bishop b2. Also the rook on a5 is defended. Knight g6 played. And he played bishop b2, e5. 40 moves have been completed. So Gukesh taking a bit of a breather here before getting back to his job of grinding this into a win. First takes the rook. Bishop takes. And now the a pawn can start rolling down the board. That's what he does. a5. The bishop here on f1 has been a tremendous piece. It's played a big role in the game. King h7. a6 played. The pawn pushes forward. Rook b8. Trying to put pressure here on the b3 pawn. But maybe you just push it even further. Yes, b4 played. The queen comes into a7, trying to attack here, maybe f4 in the air. But Gukesh simply blocks all the hopes with rook c5. The bishop on a8 is also very, very passive here. And black trying to hold on to something, but there's nothing working for him because e5 is weak, the knight is tied up, queen comes in now. Later on, the bishop can move to d3, b5 break can come in, rook d8 because the threat was b5 takes rook c7. Now he can block with rook d7 at least. And Gukesh looking for the kill now. Queen c2. I like this move. Putting pressure on f5. It's not easy to protect that pawn. And finally, Adam breaks. He goes e4. But look at this diagonal here. It's just insanely strong. fe4. Maybe taking now on e4 with the f pawn. Yes, he takes with the f pawn. And queen c3, trying to mate him here. Of course, the squares are all covered by the knight and the queen for the time being, but not for long, not for long. There's a b5 break lurking around. He goes b5, queen c7 played. He takes here. The main problem with taking on b5 was rook c7 takes, and bishop maybe after takes bishop b5, because if you take this queen c7 check. So that's the reason why he played queen c7. He took rook f8, bishop b5, the knight comes back to e7, but now another sacrifice, rook takes on d5. If you take with the knight, there's check here which ends in a mating attack. Rook f7, he takes on e4 with a check. Gukesh is slowly and steadily winning this. Pragnananda also on the adjoining board enjoying this final moments there, and queen d4 played. Adam Kozak is now getting checkmated on h8 here. The game is completely over. It has been an amazing performance by Gukesh, a game of highest quality, I would say. Maneuvering, taking space. Adam Kozak resigns. Gukesh scores his second win of the Olympiad, 2 out of 2 on board number 1, showing that he is in great shape here, and India actually registers a very resounding 3.5 victory with Gukesh, Pragnananda and Arjun leading from the front, and with it scoring a solid draw on board number 4. Gukesh actually played a very nice game here. It was reminiscent of Anatoly Karpov's wins, where he completely crushes his opponent and takes out any chances in the position. I think Gukesh did not give any opportunities to his opponent, and there's a lot that we can learn from Gukesh's play in this game.